Bitcoin up almost 3.5% as well. Let's bring in Tom Lee, head of research at Fundstrat, chief investment officer at Fundstrat Capital, as well as a CNBC contributor. And I don't remember whether it was you or Pump when we were talking about Bitcoin sort of stuck under 85,000 with gold going up every day. And it was either you or Pump that said Bitcoin usually follows a couple of months later, but has a much bigger move.
That was probably Pump.
Probably, yeah. He's pretty bullish.
Yes.
Have you noticed anything similar to that? That's a pretty big move. And in the past, gold's been leaving in the past near term, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. This year, maybe. We have seen gold leave Bitcoin in the dust and go to new highs. Looks like it'll do 4,000 easily.
Yeah.
Do you think Bitcoin eventually catches some of the same money, the same bid?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin earlier this year may have been struggling with some of the deleveraging that was happening for institutional investors.
Just selling what they could.
Yeah, selling what they could, and I think that suppressed Bitcoin, especially over weekends. But now that deleveraging is done, I think that Bitcoin is going to catch up to gold, and Bitcoin's old high was over 110,000. So I think there is a lot of room to catch up as a sort of non-dollar asset.
As for the equity markets, you think stocks are attractive, but uncertainty is still the name of the game, and it's going to persist. You think the high in the VIX, what did you say that was on April 7th, that holds?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to match that level of fear again. So I think we're probably past peak uncertainty, even with this Fed controversy, but I don't know if we're past maximum pain. I think that there's still risk that the economic consequences are going to cause markets to be hesitant, but it's going to be hard to match that fear again. So I think a structural low did take place.
Welcome back to the channel. Aaron here from Bitcoin Bros. And as you just saw in that clip, that was Tom Lee, and he is still bullish on Bitcoin for the rest of the year. And notice he was bullish on Bitcoin, but not exactly bullish on the entire market. We'll be talking about that in today's video. Stay tuned to the end. A lot of interesting information in today's video, but let's go ahead and get started with strategy. They acquired 6,556 Bitcoin for around 555 million. They got it at around 84,000 per Bitcoin. So they had a little bit of a gain right now from the Bitcoin that they bought last week, which is good. We normally see Saylor buy a whole bunch of Bitcoin and then the price go down. But we can see the Bitcoin yield is 12.1% year to date in 2025. And they hold 538,000 BTC now. And with these purchases, they used the MSTR ATM for $547 million worth of those proceeds, and then they used the STRK ATM for around $8 million, and that's how they got the total $555 million to buy Bitcoin. And seeing where Strategy ranks on the top market cap companies in the U.S., they are currently at 105 now, at $317 at around an $85 billion market cap. If you guys have been watching our channel, you know we pay attention to this because whenever S&P 500 inclusion happens, that will change their allocation percentage. And then if we look at the most actively traded U.S. stocks, Strategy's coming in here at the top 10 right now with around $5 billion of actively traded volume. Just huge volume there for Strategy. A lot of interest in the stock. And then there's this tweet here from David Bailey that I found pretty interesting. He's saying Strategy's Bitcoin is not worth whatever the spot number of Bitcoin times however much Bitcoin they have. It's worth the replacement cost. So if you try to go and buy all the Bitcoin that Strategy has, that's obviously going to make the price of Bitcoin go up exponentially. So that's actually the price of what Strategy's Bitcoin is worth, because they're never going to sell their Bitcoins. Saylor's come out and he said, hey, we're never going to sell our BTC. So you have to think of it in terms of if somebody else wanted to get 538,000 Bitcoin, what would they have to pay for that? And then we have Metaplanet here. They acquired 330 Bitcoin for around 28 million. They have a Bitcoin yield year to date of around 119.3%. And they got their Bitcoin at around 85,000. So they're a little bit in profit from the Bitcoin that they bought last week. And just check this out. Look at what Metaplanet has done here over the past 30 days. They've added 1,600 Bitcoin to their total Bitcoin holdings of around 4,855 BTC. So they're continuing to stack this BT. It doesn't seem like they're going to be slowing down anytime soon. What's been really interesting in this market today we've seen the S&P is down today at around 3%, which is a massive down day for the S&P in a single day. Year to date, we're down 12% on the S&P. And normally when we see these type of moves, historically, Bitcoin would probably be down 20 to 30 to 40%. But we're not seeing that anymore. You can see here the QQQ is down 15% year to date. Bitcoin is outperforming both the S&P and the QQQ year to date, is down 6%. So this is a change. There is a potential flight to safety happening here for Bitcoin. I remember Cathie Wood came out a couple of years ago when we had the banking crisis and the Fed basically bailed out the biggest banks in America. There was a sell-off in the market, but then Bitcoin went up. Bitcoin was starting to become a flight to safety. And we're starting to see that now as the stock market continues to go down. Bitcoin is actually going up. We haven't seen this throughout the history of Bitcoin. This is new. So people are starting to finally understand, slowly but surely, that Bitcoin is digital gold. And if you look at something like Strategy year to date, we're up 6%. And then if you look at something like Metaplanet year to date, they're up 25%. So this Bitcoin strategy is working. It's working in the times of the market going up. And now we're seeing it working in the times of the market going sideways and also going down. So companies are going to start to pay attention to like companies like Strategy, Metaplanet, and say, hey, what they're doing is really working. Bitcoin is the hardest asset in the world. There's no way to lose. If the market's going up, Bitcoin is going to go up. If the market goes down, Bitcoin is going to be that flight to safety. So as we have uncertainty in the market with the Trump tariffs, with the S&P being down over 10%, with the QQQ being down, we have a lot of uncertainty there. But you don't have the uncertainty with Bitcoin, as Bitcoin is a global asset. You have China versus U.S. right now. You have China selling U.S. treasuries. You have U.S. trying to impose tariffs on China. Basically, it's a huge trade war going on. It's hurting the dollar, it's hurting the yen, but it's helping Bitcoin, which is outside of this entire system. So we're starting to see Bitcoin game theory really start to play out, guys. This is absolutely huge what we're seeing right now, in my personal opinion. There's not a lot of people talking about these Bitcoin moves because gold has performed really well during this period. I mean, this makes sense. Anytime there's any fear in the market, people tend to buy gold and the price of gold goes up. But if you see here, the Bitcoin versus gold chart is gold, when it goes up, Bitcoin tends to follow gold with a little bit of a lag. As you can see, over the past 10 years, when gold goes up here, Bitcoin follows it a couple months after. You can see back here in 2020, gold was going up. And then 2021, we saw Bitcoin go up. Right now, we're seeing gold go up. It's hitting new all-time highs after new all-time highs. Bitcoin's kind of been a little bit boring. We started to see it go back up a little bit today. But we may see Bitcoin follow gold going into the second half of this year potentially. And Bitcoin could have a nice rest of the year. And if you also look at M2 money supply, we've looked at those charts before in the past. If you also look at global liquidity, those are breaking out. They're going up. Bitcoin tends to follow both of those as well. So we may have a great rest of the year for Bitcoin and Strategy, but that doesn't mean that the stock market, the traditional market, is going to do as well. So something to pay attention to there. And then to look a little bit at Bitcoin for the rest of all the other cryptos, no second best from Aaron Balachunas here. He's saying Bitcoin ETFs command 90% of all crypto fund assets globally, while a ton of alt meme coin ETFs are likely going to hit the market this year. They will only make a minor dent. Bitcoin likely to retain at least 80 to 85% of the share long term. So you can see here, Bitcoin is just dominating the ETF race here. Ethereum has not gotten any traction. And I think if we see an XRP Solana ETF, it's going to be the same thing. These institutions are starting to understand that Bitcoin is digital gold. It's a better version of gold. We're not seeing states or countries put Solana or Ethereum or XRP on their balance sheet. We're seeing countries put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. States in the U.S. are looking to put Bitcoin as a reserve asset. Countries around the world are doing the same thing. Countries around the world are mining Bitcoin. So we kind of see people around the world are starting to understand that Bitcoin is the hard asset here, and all of the other crypto stuff is kind of just up for grabs. We don't even know if Ethereum is going to work. We don't really know if Solana is going to be the one that replaces Ethereum. There's a lot of questions up in the air there, but we do know that Bitcoin is digital gold. And just to talk a little bit more about that, Barry Silbert here, he says, the CEO of Digital Group, he said he would have made more by simply holding Bitcoin bought at $78 in 2011 instead of investing in early crypto startups. He calls 99.9% of tokens worthless, stressing most have no reason to exist. Bitcoin is the one that we know needs to exist. So I hope you guys enjoyed all the content from today's video. If you found any value, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. We have new strategy, Bitcoin content coming out every single day. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Appreciate you watching all the way to the end. My name is Aaron from Bitcoin Bros, and I'm out.